You made a kid with another man, you cheater. You bastard.
My husband, red-faced, spat at me and cursed at me.
I want a divorce right now, and I want you both out of this house.
I was so disgusted by the loudness and violence of his voice that I closed my eyes. I had been at loggerheads with my in-laws for some time, but I had never imagined that he could be so foul and angry. And what he said was not true. I would never cheat on him. The reason for this situation was the results of our daughter's blood test. My husband and I both have type O blood, and our child could only be type O. But for some reason, our daughter's blood type was type A. As soon as my husband heard about it, his blood turned to blood. He assumed that I had cheated on him, and he unilaterally accused me of cheating. There was no way I could have been unfaithful. I want to find out why. Let's take DNA test. When I calmly retorted, he stuck out his chin and condescended to me in a pompous manner.
You'll only expose your love for men anyway. You're going to strangle yourself at best.
My husband, who apparently has no intention of changing his mind once he has made up his mind, happily offered me a lock of his own hair. 2 weeks after we received the results of the DNA test, I showed the results to my husband, who was still skeptical. The husband's eyes slowly widened as he stared at the paper, and his eyebrows, which had been raised in anger, now lowered in doubt and anxiety. No way, what's going on? I looked straight at my husband, my voice trembling, and said, without hesitation, I don't know. But you said you wanted a divorce, so I'm going to go ahead with it. I will also tell your parents about it, because they will know the truth. My name is May. I am 28 years old. I work for a trading company in the household goods industry and belong to the human resources department. I met my husband, Ken, at a drinking party organized by a friend. He is self-employed in the engineering field with his parents. I decided to marry my husband because I found his easygoing, detail-oriented personality comforting to me, as I was working in a large organization every day. Although my husband and I continued to get along well after our marriage, my parents-in-law's family was a source of great concern to me. My parents-in-law thought that a woman should join her husband's family when she becomes a bride, and I wanted to continue my own work after marriage. Are you still working? It's so disgusting for a woman to go out and dawdle. Quit your job and help us as a wife. My mother-in-law would frequently call me over to her house and complain about such things. I tried to dodge her complaints, but it was quite a stress for me to have to spend my precious days off with her. I like my job and have recently been given the responsibility of selecting new hires. I am looking forward to continuing to develop my career. The relationships in the company are good, so even though I have had some difficulties at work, I have not had any bad experiences. I want to keep my job, and not just because of the money.
You have to say something to him.
When my mother-in-law asks my husband, he was respectful, albeit dismissive. She wants to do what she's doing now, so why not? My father is still going strong, and it's not like I'm going to take over anytime soon. Let me do what I want with the family. When she hears my husband's words, my mother-in-law narrows her eyes in frustration and gives him a small tongue lashing.
You've turned into a son who talks back to me. Of course I want you to live with me. I wonder what she has told you.
My husband responded to her with a sigh of annoyance. Well, it's not like our sales will go up all at once if you help us. We'd be better off if you worked for us at your company. I'd be lying if I said that I didn't feel that they were just after my income, or that they wanted more affectionate words. However, I am grateful to my husband for protecting the lifestyle I desire. I decided to ignore my feelings and be thankful to my husband. However, after a few months, 6 months, and even a year, such exchanges would never be the same. My mother-in-law, without giving up, asked me to move in with her and resign from my job. It seems that she is really committed to this and is not willing to compromise in any way. Moreover, perhaps her frustration was so great that it was boiling in her head, and she said, "You are crazy to be so obsessed with going out to work. What are you after? A man? Yes, of course you are. You have a husband, but you're still indulging in the man you work for. Well, I don't like it. You're disgusting. She was so hysterical that she lost control of her own fantasy. It was very difficult to calm her down, and I had to manage to put her in a good mood with tea and sweets. Of course, my husband would never believe her delusions. However, he was getting fed up with my mother-in-law's frequent accusations and tantrums, and he was no longer taking my side as he used to do. Hey, if you're going to be like that, why don't you just give up? If she gets mad at you every time, it must be stressful for you, May. I'm going to take over the restaurant one day, so instead of trying to convince her, it would be faster if you quit your job and move in with her. My husband, sitting in the dining room, looks down and mumbles. When he finished, he held his head in his hands and sighed deeply. I could understand why he was in a dilemma between his mother-in-law and me. But he used to hold my shoulders, so I was shocked to find that he had let go of my hand.
Why? Why are you saying that to me?
I stopped washing the dishes and appealed to my husband in a tearful voice. You know how she is. I don't want her to keep attacking me by continuing to live the way she is now. I mean, you don't like it either, do you? You've been doing the same thing for a year now, and you still want to work? As I recall, my mother-in-law's sarcasm and verbal abuse escalated to the point where I was at my limit. But work is an important part of my life. I didn't want to give it up. And considering my mother-in-law's personality, there is a possibility that if we move in together, she will start to bully me.
Yes, but you are her son, aren't you? I want you to persuade her somehow. You said that if I wanted to do it, it would be fine, and that the income would increase because I would be working. Don't let your parents push you around. Besides, there's no guarantee that living with them will solve everything.
Tears welled up in my eyes, but on the other hand, my fists were clenched tightly and shaking. Besides feeling sadness at my husband's betrayal, I was also filled with anger. My husband slammed the newspaper down on the table and got up from his seat with a violent noise, as if irritated.
Shut up. That was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. If you stick to the same ideas, there are so many things that can go wrong. You're stubborn and selfish. Wait a minute. You just say what's convenient when it's convenient and flip-flop when it's not convenient. That's called disloyalty.
I strongly retorted to my husband, who was about to leave. In the end, the day ended with such a quarrel-like exchange. I was so exhausted that I went to bed without cleaning up. How did I end up in this situation? My mother-in-law is a problem, but the change in my husband's attitude is very painful. Once my husband leaves, I am left alone and helpless. With no one on my side, I felt very discouraged that I had to stand up for my beliefs all by myself. We had been on edge since the fight, but a few weeks later I found out I was pregnant. I had been having some bad days recently, and my coworkers were concerned, so I went to the hospital and was told that I was in the second trimester of pregnancy. My husband was happy to hear this. He was also concerned about my body during the pregnancy. If it is a boy, he will be my heir. If it is a girl, I want a pretty girl like you. You are working and taking care of the house right now, but I think this is an important time for you, so you don't have to push yourself too hard. I was touched by such kind words, but at that moment, my husband said what he did not want me to say. My husband said the last thing he wanted me to say. He said, "That's right. Why don't you take this opportunity to quit your job? I'm sure the job will be hard on your pregnant body, and it would be a good opportunity. If you move in with my parents, you can take it easy and relax while I take care of the house." At that moment, my head was boiling hot. Did he forget everything we had discussed and fought about? How could he say such a thing so easily with a smile on his face?
Don't say that. It's not a good opportunity. It's as if you're using our new baby to make me live with your in-laws. We didn't have a baby with that kind of intention, did we? I'm not going to stop working.
When I started to talk, my husband looked annoyed, as if he had been pressured. Why are you so angry with me? Why are you so mad at me? It's common for people to leave their jobs when they get pregnant, isn't it?
It is a common occurrence, but my company has a maternity leave system. I'm going to take maternity leave and come back to work after things settle down. Besides, if I quit now, I will lose all the money I earned during the leave.
My husband listened to my persuasions in a blank stare until the end of the conversation, when he suddenly reacted. Apparently, he had been pulled into the conversation about money. I wonder if it would be okay if you retire after your maternity leave is over. Then let's just take a leave of absence and think about what to do after that. He said this in a vague, indifferent tone and turned his eyes away from me. I sighed as I looked at my husband, who was staring at the TV. I had not realized before we married that he was such an opportunistic, cash-crazy man. I should be more firm from now on. A few months later, I went back to my parents' home for a home birth. I didn't want to have anything to do with my in-laws or my mother-in-law before or after the birth. When I told my parents about my mother-in-law and my husband, they were very worried about me and were even more angry than I was, especially with my husband. I don't trust people who change their minds. You should never stay with them. If you keep doing that, I think you should consider divorce. My mother must have been very angry with my husband, because she said in a low voice, while strongly handling a kitchen knife in her cooking hand. I was so pressured that even I, who had actually gotten into a big fight with him, was overwhelmed by the pressure. Thank you, but as long as my mother-in-law don't get involved, he's not a bad person. My life will change after the baby is born, so I think I'll wait and see how things go for a while. When I said this, my mother sighed with concern. It's good that you are patient, but you tend to hold things in too much. If you feel you can't do it, tell us right away, okay? Yes, I understand. A few months later, feeling my mother's strong love for me, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. I named her Marie. After that, I continued to live with my parents, not wanting to return to a place where my in-laws were still nearby as much as possible, and finally returned home a year later when I found a daycare center and went back to work. Although my husband checked on our daughter on several occasions, we never talked about moving in together or retiring. Both my husband and I avoided the topic. My mother reminded, from now on, you will have a child and your family will grow, so please support Machika and the child well. Please support May and the child, and take good care of them, quietly applying pressure. I returned to the house where I lived with my husband, but nothing had changed. My mother-in-law kept coming over to our house to see her grandchild and kept saying, enough. You have no right to continue working without living with your husband's parents. My husband was quick to respond, well, I'm sure she has a lot of things to deal with in raising a child, and she'll figure it out in time. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. My daughter has grown up remarkably, and now she can walk around freely and talk simply. I continue to work short hours while leaving my child at daycare, and I do not live with my parents-in-law. My husband has become so accustomed to my mother-in-law's verbal abuse and my persuasion that he now watches the TV and looks at me with a blank stare even when she and I are arguing. I already don't expect anything from him. I was hoping that one day I would be able to convince them on my own. Then one day, my daughter became ill. She had red rashes all over her body, and she cried out in discomfort, as if she was in pain or itching. I took an emergency day off from work and rushed to the hospital with my daughter. They said they were going to do a blood test just to be sure, so I asked for the necessary tests. They asked me what her blood type was, and when I told them I didn't know yet, the test was automatically included. I thought it was unnecessary, but the doctor said it was just in case, so I had no choice but to agree. The subsequent diagnosis revealed that the rash was atopic dermatitis, and I was prescribed special medication. I was happy to learn about the inflammation and how to deal with it, but the problem was her blood type. I am type O and my husband is also type O. Normally, we would only have children with type O blood. I was reluctant to have her blood type tested because I thought it was so obvious that it was unnecessary. Don't you think it's strange that we are both type O, but only Marie is type A? I looked down and asked, and my husband's blood turned bloodshot and he raised his voice. I was so upset that I couldn't even speak to him. I knew you were cheating on me at work. I shook my shoulders in shock at the horrifying tone of his voice. Wait, this is just a report, maybe there's some mistake in the test results.
You made a kid with another man. My mom once told me that I was obsessed with my job because I had a man outside of it, and she was right on the money. You're just pretending to be a career woman, and you're having all the fun you want with men. You're a total man-crazy woman.
My husband's face turned red and he spat at me, hurling abusive words at me. The loudness and roughness of that voice filled me with a strong sense of disgust, and I instinctively closed my eyes. It's disheartening to be misunderstood, and being spoken to in such vulgar language is shocking.
Stop it, don't talk like that. I would never cheat. You should know that I've been commuting between work and home every day. Besides, you don't trust your own wife. I don't trust you at all. These test results here are everything.
My husband shouted, slamming the test results paper aggressively. Oh, it seems like we can't communicate at all. I deeply regretted my choice of partner. I felt that keenly.
I'm not going to raise someone else's kid. I don't want to see the face of a child born to a woman who is a bastard. I want you both out of my house right now. And since you cheated on me, I'm going to charge you alimony, too.
My husband's yell echoed through the house, and our daughter, who had been sleeping in the next room, woke up and started crying. I could only imagine how uncomfortable she must be, even though her rash had not yet subsided. My husband, in spite of my heartache for my daughter, pushes his luggage on me and my daughter and tries to throw us out of the house right then and there. I quickly grab my valuables and the medicine prescribed by the hospital. Then, on the front porch, I pawed at my husband for one last thing. I can't figure it out, so I'd like to find out what's going on. I want to find out the cause of the problem because it's inexplicable. If it bothers you so much, let's do a DNA test. Upon hearing this, my husband would look down at me with a pompous look on his face, jutting out his chin.
Yeah, why don't you do it? It's only going to reveal your man-craving ways anyway. At best, you'll be strangling yourself.
My husband, who had no intention of changing his mind once he had made up his mind, gladly offered me a lock of his own hair. We were suddenly kicked out of our house and headed for my parents' house. It took 2 hours to get there, and by the time we arrived, I was already exhausted. My mother was surprised to see us and was furious when she heard what we had to say.
It's terrible. He's out of his mind to make a one-sided decision and kick you out. It is true that the blood test results are strange, but you and your husband should work together to find the cause of the problem. You should give him back to your parents.
My mother said to my daughter, whose skin was still itching, "You're in pain, but you're scared. Marie, there is nothing wrong with you." She gently applied the medicine to her skin. I took a leave of absence from work and concentrated on taking care of my daughter while my parents took care of me. At the same time, I sent my husband's hair for a DNA test and waited for the results. As long as I was not having an affair, the blood type thing was a real mystery to me. I hate to think about it, but even if my husband had been unfaithful, the child would have been born to the other woman, and this situation would not have happened. A little over 2 weeks later, I received the results of the DNA test. I slowly opened the document with my mother. I was surprised at what was written on it. Of course, Marie was definitely my husband and I's child. And it is also proven that I am type O. However, it was proven that my husband's blood type was actually type A. I went to the house from which we had been evicted to tell them this fact. I knew that I would get into trouble, so I decided to leave my daughter with her mother.
What the hell are you doing here? Damn woman.
My husband, who was at home, of course greeted me coldly, but I calmly showed him the test results. His eyes slowly widened as he stared at the paper, and his eyebrows, which had risen in anger, now lowered in doubt and anxiety. It can't be true, why? My husband said he was a type O. Of course, there was no way he would lie about such a thing, and he had probably believed it himself until now. I looked him straight in the eye and said, without hesitation, "Let's talk about this with your parents. I am sure they will understand the truth." Surprisingly, he nodded his head. He had previously told me that in addition to his blood type, both of his parents were also type O. There could be a lie there. His body was tense and fearful of the secret of his birth, and he shrank back. He looked like a different person from the one who had verbally abused me. When we went to my parents-in-law's house together, my husband seemed to have told them about their daughter's blood type and my suspicions of infidelity, and the look my mother-in-law gave me was as cold as ice.
"Why are you with her?" My mother-in-law expressed her disgust.
With trembling hands, her husband showed her the DNA test form. "I don't have time for this. Look at this, you and Dad both said that my blood type is O. Why does it say I am type A?" My mother-in-law took it slowly and looked at it for a while, her face scrunched up. Then she led us into a back room. My mother-in-law, sitting in front of us, looks formal and silent. She seemed to have something to say, but she looked down, biting her lip as if she wanted to say something. "Is there a reason? Mom is type O, Dad is type O, so of course I'm type O. It should be that way." My husband was trying his best to act tough, but inside he seemed to be seething with anxiety, and his hands were shaking under the table. "I know, but..." Her face is as white as a doll's. Her eyebrows are painfully furrowed, and her pursed lips are wagging.
"Why don't you tell me? Tell me the truth."
My husband noticed that my mother-in-law was still not giving up her pursuit of the truth. Silence reigned for a few seconds. Then she let out a quiet sigh and slowly opened her mouth. "There's something I've been keeping quiet about, you're not actually Dad's child." I gulped at my mother-in-law's line.
"What? You're lying? What do you mean?"
My husband was, of course, greatly dismayed by this sudden admission. "When I was married to your father, I had an inadvertent affair with another man. You are the child of that affair. My husband is now 30 years old. How shocking it must be to have what you believe to be your family until this age fall apart." He was already shaking up to his shoulders. When my husband asked her, his mother-in-law looked pained. The answer was obvious from the look on her face.
"You've been hiding this from me and my father all this time."
After she said that, my husband looked as if he was about to cry and kept staring at my mother-in-law's face. My mother-in-law spilled a single tear.
"It is true that I took good care of you as our child."
She had cheated on her husband right after their marriage, had a child by him, and continued to live her life deceiving her family as the couple's child.
"I can't take it when you say that. So, my mom was having an affair with a type A guy? Why did you hide something so important from me?"
My husband, red around the eyes as if about to burst into tears, stood up and questioned her. "I guess," my mother-in-law muttered. She looked down and remained silent. What a surprise. How could my mother-in-law's long-standing secret be revealed by my daughter's blood type? Was it a twist of fate or God's punishment? At the very least, Mickey was definitely my husband's child. I watched my husband's with bated breath. How is this possible? I had never had my blood type tested. I have been strong since I was a child, so there was no need for me to do so. I had no choice but to believe Mom because you said I was type O. I am so sorry. At the moment, the door to the room was quietly opened. "I've heard your story." Standing there was my father-in-law, his face beyond angry and cold. He, too, had been pushing for me to move in, and had made small sarcastic remarks every time we saw each other, but I never got involved because my mother's extremism was too much in the foreground. His face, which had always been so happy about the future of his business, was now tinged with disappointment in my mother-in-law, who had kept her affair a secret.
"Hey, is it true what they say about Ken not being our child?"
My father-in-law asked my mother-in-law in a low voice.
"Oh, no. Did you hear that?"
My mother-in-law, who had intended this to be a private conversation, was now blatantly embarrassed that she had been overheard. While she was thinking of excuses, my father-in-law found the test result sheet and stared at it intently.
Are you saying that you had illicit relations with another man, and that you have continued to cheat on me until this age?
The mask of calmness that my father-in-law had put on fell away at once. This time, his face turned bright red and he yelled at my mother-in-law. "No, you can't say it like that. Ken is our precious son. We have raised him with the utmost care."
Yes, that's right. You tricked me into raising a man's child that you gave birth to, and I raised him with great care for 30 years.
With a loud bang, my father-in-law slammed the test results down on the table. My husband and I both winced. My mother-in-law could no longer stand my father-in-law's anger, and she stood up and began to talk back to him.
What? It doesn't matter if you're angry now. I don't have any contact with that person anymore, and it was 30 years ago, so you can put a statute of limitations on it, can't you? There is no statute of limitations. I didn't think you were such a bad person. I didn't think you were such a selfish woman.
My father-in-law shouted and pointed at my husband. My husband was frozen in his seat, his mouth agape at the unexpectedly huge fight between his parents-in-law.
Now that I know this, I will no longer be married to you. Divorce. You too, Ken. If you are not my child, then don't come back to my house again. Wait. You can't be serious.
After that, my husband was thrown out of the house while the parents-in-law continued to fight with each other. I left the house with my husband and went to a family restaurant to discuss divorce. I know you are not cheating on me. It was all a misunderstanding. I am sure that Marie is yours and mine. So I'm withdrawing the divorce. Why don't you just live in that house again? As expected of an opportunistic husband. I was surprised that he came up with such a convenient proposal. I replied in a nonchalant manner, feeling a bit disillusioned. Of course I don't like it. It is true that the misunderstanding was cleared up, but I cannot take back what I said once. What you said to me was too much. I really can't forgive you for speaking ill of me and Marie. I can't be married to someone who can say such things with impunity. I'm going to proceed with the divorce. Hey, wait! That's no way you say it. I gave him a cold smile as he hurriedly tried to stop me.
You were right to leave your wife who wouldn't live with you, wouldn't quit her job, and wouldn't listen to the house, weren't you? At first you were on my side, but then you started to follow your mother-in-law's lead. I don't want a husband who won't support me. Let's talk about the rest through our lawyer. Goodbye.
Then I quickly got up and left my husband, who was at a loss, alone in a family restaurant crowded with happy families. It was about time for me to pick up my daughter, who was waiting for me at my parents' house. My husband returned to his parents' home, but as his father-in-law had said at the time, he was not allowed to step foot in the house, and of course, he was fired from the family business. Naturally, he sent me a message saying that he had decided not to discuss his heir to the family business. I ignored the message and immediately sought out a lawyer's office to file a claim for compensation. I was able to claim $40,000 in alimony, claiming that what my husband had done constituted mental harassment. After receiving a content-certified letter from her husband, she received a complaint that she could not pay him because she did not have a job, but she responded firmly that she could not lower the amount. The husband had been resting on his laurels, believing that he would become the president of the company if he took over the family business in the future, and had not saved any money. I knew very well that he spent all the money he earned, except for living expenses, on drinking and gambling. In addition, they could no longer maintain the room they lived in together. On the other hand, my mother-in-law, who was thrown out of the house in a 60-year-old divorce when she found out about the affair, apparently managed to get in touch with her past lover and tried to run away to him. The ex-husband got in touch with the mother-in-law, joined her, and went with her to the home of the cheating boyfriend, who was her biological father. The woman and her son had not seen each other for 30 years, and were surprised and perplexed by the sudden arrival of the woman of the time and her son. And he did not remember such a long time ago. He tried to run away, saying that it was a misunderstanding and that it was too late to tell her. She caught the cheating partner and demanded a DNA test, saying that she would pay for it. The wife, who lived in the same house, found them struggling on the porch, and the three of them were questioned about what was going on. To my surprise, at that time 30 years ago, my mother-in-law's unfaithful partner was also already married, and now his wife found out about his affair and confronted him with a divorce, and they started struggling right in front of my mother-in-law and my ex-husband. My husband and I fought, and then my mother-in-law and father-in-law fought. Finally, there was a fight between my mother-in-law's unfaithful partner and his wife. The situation was so bad that it caused a big commotion all over the place. While all this was going on, I rented a new room close to my parents' house and started living with my daughter. This is because I don't want to go back to the room I used to live in with my husband, and I can't stay at my parents' house forever. My mother later said, "Your husband is a strange man, and your in-laws are all strange people. It's a good thing we divorced. From now on, let's take good care of Marie and raise her by ourselves." My mother helps me out from time to time, which is a big help. I apologized to the company for the leave, summarized what I could, and applied for a transfer to a branch office that would allow me to commute from my new location. The company was disappointed that I was leaving the head office, but accepted my transfer and I was able to return to work without incident. Just as I was about to start my new life, my mother came to my house with an angry look on her face. "Hey, will you listen to me?" Apparently not angry with me, I listened to my mother.
"Your ex-husband, of all people, came to our house. I really can't believe it at all."
My mother's eyebrows lifted as she sipped the tea I had served her. I was so sorry for him. I felt uncomfortable at his sheer pettiness, and I felt bad for my parents' house for causing him so much trouble.
"He's been asking you for help because he's unemployed and can't pay child support. When I told him that our daughter had already started a new life, he came to us with a terrible look on his faces, shaking and asking us for money. It was so bad that we immediately kicked him out."
After a brief conversation, my mother seemed refreshed and gulped down a cup of tea. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry I even bothered your mother." My mother smiled broadly at me. "It's okay. It's over now. I've threatened to call the police the next time you come over, so he won't come again." My mother patted me on the shoulder. I was so encouraged by her warmth that I burst into tears. My mother is a true type O. After that, I received daily messages and voicemails from my ex-husband. Apparently, after being evicted from their respective homes, my husband, my mother-in-law, and the man with whom my mother-in-law had an affair had decided to start a new life together. When I saw the contents of the messages, I laughed because it was such a strange combination. However, it was impossible for them to cooperate with each other after the bitter fight they had been through. As expected, they were not getting along with anyone. So he asked me for help. How could he be so brazen? I ignored everything and blocked all of his accounts and phone numbers. And my ex-husband's bad luck did not stop there. He came to my current place of employment. However, he never confronted me. I was so terrified that he had been following me again and again that I had talked to the company about him and had them put the groundwork in place in advance. As soon as the surveillance camera caught sight of him at the entrance, sirens went off in the office. I watched through the monitor as he ran away from the security guards, startled by the sound of the sirens. The employees, who had witnessed my ex-husband's obsession, all took pity on me and promised to keep him away from me in the future. Soon after that, another person came to my office. It was my mother-in-law, who should no longer be involved. She came during my lunch break, when I was not in the office, and caught me in the hallway.
"I finally found you. You have to take responsibility for once and for all."
Her voice echoed through the office corridor. A passing employee looks at me with concern as someone from outside the company is engaging with me, his face contorted in anger.
What's going on all of a sudden?" Why did you even come to my office?
I was puzzled, and she, looking much paler and paler than before, ranted and raved.
Of course I did. If only you hadn't done the DNA test, none of this would have happened. You've ruined everything I've worked for. Everything I've built up is ruined. Everything is a mess.
She was the one who cheated on her husband and did not tell me for over 30 years that she had a child with him, but she forced me to take the blame. She was about to grab me when a security guard came and took her down. The incident was immediately reported, and even the police came to the scene. For some reason, my ex-husband was there with me at the time and was watching from the shadows, so it seems that both parents were questioned together. I really wish they would stop this. My new life has already started, and I am divorced from my ex-husband. The next day, I returned home with the thought, please let me lead a peaceful life. The next day, just like the day before, someone entered the company and waited for me in the hallway. This time it was my father-in-law. There was no way I had told him where I worked, and I wondered where the information had leaked from. I looked at him with a sense of dread and he said, well, I caused you a lot of trouble in the past and made a lot of noise. I left my wife and kicked my son out of the house, and then I realized that we are short on staff. I know you're divorced, but you're still my daughter-in-law, and I want you to help us as an employee, he said, his face smiling as he spoke of his mysterious theory.
Don't be absurd. I am your son's ex-wife whom you insulated. I have nothing to do with this now. If you are headhunting, please look elsewhere. As I replied calmly, my father-in-law's scowl changed and his eyes sharpened, and he came at me fiercely. You're going to talk back to me? When you were married to my son, you never quit your job, you never moved in with him, and you were selfish. I told you I was going to cut ties with my son and wife and hire you from scratch, and you said no to that, too? Women these days are all so cocky and disgusting. His attitude was so strange, and just like when my ex-mother-in-law came to see me, the security guards and the police immediately came and took him away. So the days of the 3 people involved coming to my office came to an end, and I was somehow able to be released, much to the concern of the people at my office. This time, I would be able to work peacefully. My ex-father-in-law tried to rebuild the business, which was short-staffed, by putting the divorced but still ex-family theory against my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. Both my ex-husband and my ex-mother-in-law were in need of a place to live and money, so they reluctantly complied if they were given a house and a job. However, there is no way that a family that has been so troubled by lies and betrayal can get along now. Their family life and business have not been going well, and their neighborhood is filled with the sound of terrible fights every day and night, and it seems that the entire community has been snubbing them. Even so, he has been paid his alimony. Because he has a lawyer on the other side, he receives reminders every time the payment stops. Perhaps they are reluctantly living with debts because they cannot make ends meet if they pay alimony in their current environment. And to repay his debts, he finds his life even more difficult. He seems to be in a perfect vicious circle, working for his ex-father's company on the cheap. On the other hand, my life is going very well. The know-how I have acquired at the head office has come in handy at my new job. I have been praised for my speed and accuracy, and I have already gained the trust of those around me. I have already been offered a raise and a promotion, and I am expected to do even better than before. The people around me are calm and cheerful, and I feel like I want to work here forever. The environment is one in which I would like to keep working. Marie has grown up quickly, taking care of her at a daycare center during the daytime and sometimes getting help from my mother. By going to the hospital regularly, the atopic dermatitis is gradually getting better, which is a relief for the moment. It is so cute to see her telling me about what happened at the daycare center every day. His 3rd birthday is approaching soon, and my mother and I are discussing how we should celebrate it. Even though she is still too young to remember it, I want to give her a nice and lovely celebration. My mother has been knitting sweaters for my daughter. You can count on me to knit you the cutest sweater in the world, she said, and showed off her work in front of me.
I have taken up baking and am preparing to make a birthday cake for my daughter while making her daily snacks. I've started baking, and while making my daily snacks, I'm preparing to make a homemade birthday cake for my daughter. What do you think, Marie? She nodded her head a little and answered, apple pie. I couldn't help but smile at her cuteness. I am sure that I will have to face many hardships in my long life. But I want to overcome them with a smile, trusting the people around me in work and child rearing, and carefully accepting what is in front of me. With this child, I am sure we will be fine.